Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another month of the Chichester Chats. It's me, Phil, Lilith, and of course, the man himself, Mr. DG Chichester. Welcome back, sir.
Thank you, guys. Here to chat. Looking forward to it. We've got a little bit of a scary theme today, so I have my black and orange, going. So
Nice.
we're all good.
Yeah, Nightstalkers 8 and 9 from 1993, guest starring Morbius. Probably the best Morbius content you'll get this month, kids.
and appropriately, this is a bat shirt, So I just
Oh,
wanted to
nice.
point that out. So
So,
but yeah, the best Morbius. That's both that's damning with faint praise, right? But I mean,
well, have you seen that? Have you seen that movie?
I haven't. I was looking forward to it. I have to admit. Obviously today's world, we're a little bit more selective about what you're going to go to the movies for, both in terms of how full the theater is and also what they apparently charge for it, which is insane. So after the reviews started rolling in, I definitely cooled off on it. I will watch it. I will look forward to it whenever it streams or comes out on DVD. I think it's probably got a couple moments in it, but now did you guys go and see it?
I
saw
it a long time ago, and then I had to rewatch once they recut it. So it's just like, ugh.
Oh, you saw it before? Like,
yeah.
How did you do that? You had an inside
I'm friends
connection?
with people who do screeners. Sometimes we go to like fan stuff like that.
So what changed? Because I heard they had a
Well, yeah, like originally they weren't gonna do the Vulture thing, and then they ended up doing the Vulture thing, and then this is just a lot of missing. There's a lot of good missing scenes, so I am interested to see the director's cut.
Right, the Zack Snyder cut will come for this. So it's just going to go in and.
I mean, you know how just they release on like Blu-ray the director's cut ending and stuff like that. I know the ending changed a little bit, so
And they pushed it
they
back.
added the girl.
Times?
So
they pushed it back. I mean, they pushed it back like 5-6 times. It was supposed to come out in 2020, so it was supposed to be before Spider-Man and a bunch of those.
Absolutely, it was one of the pandemic issues, I know, but didn't it finally come out on April Fool's Day or something like that?
Exactly. That was chef's kiss, Sony. Chef's kiss.
I suppose.
Jokes on you, kids.
That cursed day.
Phil's birthday. What a way to celebrate.
Oh, what are we
they are desperate to mine what they have from the Spider-Man license to find something that sticks.
Just focus on Across the Spider-Verse. Just don't mess that up, and you can make $1 billion.
So true. So true. They should really look at that as their thing. But now they've got there's an El Muerto thing coming out, and
Madam Web, Craven the Hunter.
He appeared in 2 whole issues. Come on.
I suppose it's just grab.
I mean, Miguel's right there, but Miguel's problematic, so I get it.
Too pricey. Spider-Man 2099. Everything else looked like the future.
Yeah, the future from 1994 or 6 or whatever the hell it was, which is just
it's a retro piece.
It is. Everything looks like a Paul Verhoeven, like Total Recall kind of.
I'm sure those sets are still somewhere they could borrow them, or some Blade Runner sets or something. The way we're going is going to be Mad Max for sure, though.
All right, but yes, today we're talking some good Morbius. Yes, like I said, Nightstalkers 8 and 9. So you were like in the thick of the whole Midnight Suns thing, because even like these 2 issues, you're like, hey, we're gonna mention Darkhold, we got to mention Morbius. So I mean, big stuff going on, and we had some like a big Marvel Supernatural thing going on in 1993.
Well, that was the whole essence of what Midnight Suns was, right? That was the whole Midnight Suns was Marvel, and in some cases, more specifically, Bobby Chase's desire to have a universe, a new set of characters. I think Bob Harris, who edited all the X-Men books, famously said to her, "You need a line of books of your own." And with all of the supernatural characters that Marvel had and has floating around but not having a home, it was actually a pretty smart and creatively interesting choice to say, could we build something around this? And certainly Ghost Rider had, quote unquote, proven that there was hunger for for supernatural type characters. Now, I think if you really went back and broke down what worked about Ghost Rider, it wasn't necessarily the supernatural aspects of it, although it was, I think Howard Mackey especially was a driver behind that, and I think found a really great balance between the supernatural occult elements and the action elements and the character elements. But it wasn't dependent on the dark side of things. Midnight Suns would end up leaning very heavily into dark and supernatural and creepy stuff, and I'm as much to blame for that as anybody. Because
there's no blame. It was great. I mean,
no,
it's very much an ode to the '70s horror that a lot of the comic book writers that we know and love, respect today, came up on, whether they were reading them or working on them. So I think this is just like chef's kiss, honestly.
No, thank you. The better chef's kiss, not the release Morbius on April Fool's
exactly.
Chef's kiss. But I was part of the whole creation, myth, of the Midnight Suns, sitting in, some remote retreat with Bobby and Chris Cooper and Howard Mackey and Len Kaminsky and cooking up these stories and the world and who are they? Why are they the Midnight Suns? Who's their main antagonist? Where we came up with Lilith and all of these
pure evil.
Yeah. And but it's I think as it went on, it got more and it got more quickly got very self-referential for me. Like the world itself becomes the world itself, and that's a strange world. And when you lean into all that stuff, I mean, you're letting me off the leash with stuff I was really enthusiastic about. But does anyone really need to spend 3 pages on, wax divination, and that type of thing? I don't know. But then we got into the crossover with this because now this was going into the second major crossover. The first major crossover being the beginning of the Midnight Suns, the rise of the Midnight Suns.
Yeah.
And then the second one being this Midnight Massacre, where we decided apparently that poor Blade wasn't grimacing enough and needed to grimace more, and he was enough of a hothead and ready to kind of go off the leash at every supernatural thing. We had to make him even more ready to go off the leash at every supernatural thing. So a lot of... I wish I could go back, I think I've said this before, and make these guys smile more, because they are rage. They are rage personified.
Hey, you let Blade take the sunglasses off. That's a step.
Yes, so true. I mean, apparently we should have gotten, in this day and age, we could have gotten a nice licensing deal, nice tie-in for particular. Exactly, nice tie-in with some kind of thing.
I was reading, so I was like, Blade has eyes? Whoa.
Yeah.
So you're talking about the beginnings and, all the planning and stuff. So did you have any say in who was on the team, or did they hand you like, you have to use Blade, you have to use Hannibal King?
Originally, like at the beginning of the
like back in the
Nightstalkers?
begining, yeah.
Before they were even called Nightstalkers, because I came up with that. It was 3... there were 2 phases that I'm aware of Marvel trying to do things with the horror characters. I may have mentioned, we may have talked about this before, but at one point, my character, big air quotes, Terror, right? The assassin, the boogeyman assassin, was supposed to be almost like a crypt keeper who was going to bring together all of the horror characters. They called me up and said, can you bring Terror over from the Epic universe, bring him into the Marvel universe? We want to do something with Werewolf by Night and Dracula and the Living Mummy. We have all these random horror characters. We think Terror could be some kind of magnet for them, right? So we talked about that for a while, and then that didn't go anywhere, and I thought nothing was going to happen with the horror characters. Then Bobby and her office had this epiphany and started this planning and started to kind of figure out, okay, who's going to join Ghost Rider? Because Ghost Rider was clearly at the center of it.
Oh, yeah.
Howard was going to do a spin-off of it, the Spirits of Vengeance. But what else was going to be in this world? So she started to take pitches or develop pitches. Len Kaminsky had a Morbius pitch, as I understand it, sort of sitting on his desk and literally like just ran over, from wherever he was. If he was in the office, he ran down the hall. If he was across town, he literally ran across town, or if it was Len, he may have come at night and flown. I don't know, and I say that with great affection for Len. But they came to me and asked me to pitch something with these three characters. They didn't know what to do with them. They had no idea. Well, we've got. They're all vampire themed, right, or vampire theme-ish. Drake and Hannibal and Blade, but we don't know what to do with them at all. Now, I had written a couple of issues of Daredevil with Ghost Rider in them, and I had done a good enough job that Bobby actually noticed and actually said to Howard, hey, Dan did a pretty good job with Ghost Rider. Not everybody does, because he was guest starring in everything. Howard, of course, immediately called me and threatened my life if I did anything else with Ghost Rider, and got on Bobby's radar. And I think probably Howard pushed, me into the Midnight Suns, figuring, well, if Dan's working on what will become Nightstalkers, he can't write any more Ghost Rider.
Two birds, one stone.
Two birds, like keep him away from my character. And so they gave me these characters, and I pitched the whole concept. Right, I came back and I said I want to call them Nightstalkers. I said they're so damaged by the supernatural. I wish I still had that pitch. That would be an awesome one to still have in my files to see what I actually wrote. But I said they've been so damaged by the supernatural. Let's not lean into the supernatural. Let's make them anti-supernatural. Everything about their lives has been screwed up because of that. They should become almost like this badass Ghostbusters, and that was the pitch. And I described what the dynamics would be. I remember describing the whole Linda Exorcist nanotechnology, because I was big into that at that point, and so she had other people pitching something for those books. That wasn't the only. I know that, and I was really at that point gunning for Son of Satan. I really wanted to write Son of Satan, and that was being pitched at the same time. And I was thinking I was a lock on that book. How could I not be? I had done Nightbreed and Hellraiser, and I was the horror guy. But of course I didn't get it, because having an ego never does you any good. And but that I sat down. I'd given them the pitch. They had read it. We went out to lunch. We talked it through. I said, I'm a little concerned about the Nightstalkers title, because there was this, Carl Kolchak, who was called Nightstalker, well, there's that too. That's the socially responsible version, Lilith. I was thinking only simply of that there was a TV show called The Nightstalker. Oh yeah, see?
Honestly, I'm such a comic book nerd. Like, the comic book comes first, TV show didn't even dawn on me until you just said that.
There's apparently a Nightstalker comic coming out. It's like some kind of omnibus one with a lot of people doing things with that TV character. But anyway, I said I'm a little concerned about that. She had no idea who that show was, so she could care less. And so they had actually barreled ahead, I think, at that lunch, and they knew that they wanted to do this. So they had actually they brought out the logo. I can't remember who did the logo, but it's a pretty good logo. Actually, I had done something like that for my pitch, because I had all these weirdo fonts on my computer at that point, and I remember doing a negative type thing, and they liked it so much they got it cleaned up. But whoever cleaned it up did a nice job.
Oh wait, Phil, did you see who was the letterer? It was John Costanza.
Oh.
Did he do the logo? I don't know if they gave logo credits in it.
No, but he's the letterer on it, and like we always, every time we see him, because we have a Seinfeld thing. It's like, mark your bingo cards, kids. So
one of my favorite letterers was a guy named Gaspar Saladino, and if you look through classic comics, he was a master. Yeah. But he would always sign his vouchers just Gaspar, exclamation point, and it was the best. He was such a gentleman, such a amazing talent, and John is talentless talent as well.
So that's weird. Yeah, it's like, Son of Satan wasn't big in Midnight Sun, so like they had like a specific plan of like, we'd want these three characters, one, of course, Ghost Rider, Morbius, and again, like you said, they had like those random, Werewolf by Night should have been big.
Well, it was. Remember, most Marvel things were. Not remember. I believe it's still this might be the same today, but characters were controlled by different editorial offices.
Yeah.
So Daredevil office had all the Daredevil and ancillary characters. The Spider office had those characters beyond Spider-Man, other things sort of associated with it. Free range characters that were maybe tangentially owned. Oh, so and so first showed up in the Hulk. Should he be in the Hulk office, or whatever? Sometimes offices would lay claim to things like that. But as this plan came into effect, these characters, wherever they had started, if Morbius started in Spider-Man or whatever, Morbius became part of Bobby's office, became part of the Midnight Suns office. That sort of thing. Wherever Drake and Hannibal and Blade were still floating around from, that it was decided this would kind of go there. But other characters were still free floating. So there was a decision of that Son of Satan was in Fabian's office, if I remember correctly, Fabian Nicieza's office. So so there was this decision: start to build a world around these guys, and then don't go beyond that. Now, Strange is the tripping up point for this, because any supernatural world by right should revolve around Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange was in Ralph Macchio's office at that point, so Ralph was not going to give up on Doctor Strange and let him become our Professor X or something like that. We got licensed to use him in that one scene, and we came up with that in the first issues. And we came up with that BS line of like, we are too powerful to be in the same space, you and I, Lilith. Therefore, you will not see me normally within the pages of the Midnight Suns. I guess that's my best Doctor Strange for the moment. And the thought was build this world, and then probably as it becomes more and more successful, add other things to it.
Yeah, because eventually, didn't they try to bring Doctor Strange in later on?
Well, Strange would come back as a reference point, and I don't know, maybe they got a lot more invested after I was thrown off the book, but it was, but they may have brought him in, which would make sense. I mean, he really should have been a more of a key point of it, as opposed to just this sort of puppet master manipulator he is at the beginning. It would have been good to draw more on that aspect of things.
Yeah, it just seems so weird, I guess, because of the editorial stuff. Because I read some of those Son of Satans, and it's like he really wasn't part of that either. So I'm like, it just seems, I guess, just pick and choose. What editorial offices want to play ball. Then is the whole.
Well,
point.
That's it too, right? And somebody might have gone in and said, how much do you want to do with it? But it was such the weirdness of the Midnight Suns was. You had a lot of writers, and I'll push the writers here. I mean, comics is obviously a very collaborative medium, but we did drive a lot of this world initially, and the story and the structure of it. Almost to a person, we were all really big fans of horror and supernatural, and you can see that in the tone and the references and the weirdness and this kind of stuff. But I don't think the editorial staff was. And I say that because I remember being at one of the big story conferences, and we had pitched some weird incident. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was the reason for something happening, and Lilith's characters were going to do this. And for listeners, Lilith was the big bad of the Midnight Suns, and not this Lilith, right? Different Lilith, So let's
different big bad, different big bad.
Different. Clear. This is the more powerful Lilith we have on the show with us right now. This was a comic book Lilith, and we pitched this thing that she was going to do, or her characters were going to do, and the assistant editor snaps back, "Oh, that is so sci-fi horror," and
she's going to tell
Howard,
you?
No, but the point being, exactly, Phil.
Like,
and me and Howard Mackey,
like,
exactly. Are you editing this title? So there was this thought. And maybe it was right. I don't know. I remember looking at Howard Mackey and with this scared look in our eyes. I think there was this thought that, the horror stuff is just the cover paint, and these are just mutant books. These are just superhero books, and that's of course the wrong way to come at things, because it's got to start with the character. It's got to start what drives the character. Blade is driven, in this in everything, but in these Morbius stories, we are ostensibly here to talk about. But by this drive that his from birth he was ruined by the supernatural, right? That and everything. So he's got this mania about bloodsuckers and revenants, and I'm going to wipe them out. They ruined my mother's life. They ruined my life before I even began.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, that was oh, sorry, I lost my train of thought there for a second.
I mesmerized you with all the vampires.
That's right. That's right. No, they wanted the popularity of these characters, especially what Ghost Rider was the linchpin, but they didn't want to go full Chichester.
Right, and maybe that was the right thing. I look back at these books and I enjoy them more now than I did when I just sort of put them aside years ago and said, "Oh, they're probably not that good." I mean, there's a lot to enjoy in these couple of issues. There's also a lot that's problematic. But I think you dive, and the problematic stuff for me for the Midnight Suns was always we dove so deep into the darkness so quickly. It's hard to have a reference point for the outside reader. You need to kind of bring somebody in and invest them more along the way. Think about your your favorite horror movies. Start with the outsider coming into the strange world, probably, versus you're there full on, crazy time, all out. A Rob Zombie, Devil's Rejects, which I love, right, is all in that world right from the beginning, right? You are full on into. That's never going to have the strange mass appeal of other things, and Midsommar, which I don't know if you guys saw, but totally disturbing movie, and it's not like a big mainstream movie, but that kind of leads you into that.
Literally, you're with the outside perspective.
You're with the outsiders, and then you come into it before you know it. You're in this world, and oh my god, I'm never watching this movie again. Not that it wasn't a great movie, it was, but no way.
Yeah, you only need to watch it once, kids.
Never going back there. Anyway,
that's a good analogy, definitely.
But was it a lot of it too? Just like it was like the nature of '90s comics. It's like, yeah, you started this book, and they started some of the other books with a big event. You're like you said, you're revving up to another big event, so it just.
Oh yeah, and we were trying to build we were not trying. We were building a universe of characters and titles within the universe. That was the intent of it. The intent of the Midnight Suns was to create like an X-Men, a supernatural X-Men. That was the point. And so I don't have a problem with the crossover events, but as you said right at the beginning, Phil, this one, because it's tied into the lead into things, starts to get strange, right? As happened in Darkhold 8, as will happen in Nightstalkers 15. Asterisk here,
Morbius, yeah.
Follow there. Right, follow Blade, as this. And the pages, there are a couple of scenes in this 9 especially, which is just bad storytelling on my part, clearly. But some of it was obviously done. You got to set something up. We got to set this up. This has got to happen here. Some of the other bad storytelling is just other problems. But that starts to get that complicated stacking, because we obviously had to set up. I had to pick up on that letter from whatever Darkhold thing was to set up this whole thing that Blade is going to get this evil letter, or the evil page rather, in order for him to become Switchblade and start the whole Midnight Massacre thing off.
No, I think you did a good job, because I've
always been curious about that, though. It's like how, because even with that last Spider-Man one, when we talked to a lot of those people, it was just like, well, you got to have a mastermind, and you got to follow it. Otherwise,
no, I want to go back and read all the Midnight Sun stuff. You did a good job, but the whole thing with Morbius, did you want Morbius in this story, or were they like, oh hey, the next big event's coming, we need you to get Morbius to point A or whatever?
Well, yes, you did have to do certain things like that, but I don't remember Morbius being shoved at me. It was the baton pass of the Darkhold page that was my responsibility. Mm-hmm. We actually, because we were all really friendly and on the same page creatively, from a writing point of view, it was as easy as saying to Howard, I want to do this with Ghost Rider, or saying to Len, hey, could I play with Morbius? Now, there was some sense that we wanted to build on things with each other, right? That we would, within this world, we wanted to keep referring. We didn't want to say Nightstalkers suddenly just become the X-Files, although that might have been a good idea, before the X-Files, you know, or Morbius just to be its own title with no reference to anything else. No sense of being part of the Midnight Suns if you don't get a chance to weave in with things. But I think my responsibility here was pick up the letter and start setting Blade up for this, because after this Nightstalkers issue, whatever comes next, they're probably going to start to allude to the, you know, I don't know if you read the Darkhold issue that came out alongside this. Did it have the Darkhold characters cackling like, we've got Blade set up? Maybe. You know, our plan is in motion. That kind of thing would probably have been a scene in another one. But we were so friendly. It was probably me saying, I haven't played with Morbius much once yet. You know, let me play with Morbius now. Now, it's a weird story because I actually read this and I like the aspects of the story a lot. I don't know why I had to drag in all the other crap with Stone Cold and all this other stuff, because I could have just stayed with Morbius and that would have been a really much more interesting story.
Yeah, well, what was that? Wasn't that your the stuff you had ongoing in the book? So
yeah, but you know, that would just been yeah, but it becomes the Stone Cold one. Stone Cold was this alchemist who becomes like a gargoyle and you could see the 90s 2x4 ness of it there. He's a stone and he's a gargoyle and he's cruel and cold.
Head.
Yes, so we'll call him Stone Cold.
There's the 90s. You had to come up with names like that, you know.
Oh yeah, I was probably watching too much wrestling and Stone Cold Steve Austin, and I should have had a reference to that in there somewhere. But no, I get back to the main part of your question. I think it was just a matter of, well, he'd be cool to play with, and nobody gave me the edict, and because Len would have read the plot probably. They often did that if people were using the other character. There might have been a checkpoint, but Len and I were pretty simpatico from things in that regard, so there was no issues that I recall.
Okay, but seriously, why Boston? Why is Boston the location?
That's a great question, actually, because I put the Nightstalkers in Boston. Everything was in New York. Everything's always in New York. I thought, as I was again creating the pitch for the series, and it was a pretty good pitch, as I recall. Again, my great hard drive crash took away a lot of nostalgic items. But as I was writing it, I know I was trying to invest in it certain hooks and things that would feel unique. Giving Drake his special technology, right? His special Ghostbusters technology and how it worked and what it was called and what it would look like and this type of thing. So I know that was a big description point. And I thought, well, what city could we go to that's gives us enough of a backdrop, and not having spent much time in Boston, I had that stupid idea of like, well, it's kind of historical. It's got sort of Puritan-ish things, and Salem's not too far away. And so it conflated in my mind that it was big enough and unique enough. And as I started to do some pre-internet research and bought some books on Boston and went to the library on Boston, it started to look like it had enough, more than enough visual hooks, right? Fenway, the harbor, the chevron sign. There were things that I could use as, saying to the artist, these are things we could draw. Trying to visually think through the parts of the story I could never illustrate. The Puritan architecture, things like that would make it a non-generic backdrop. Just seeing between history and visualization and a little bit of a nod to that Puritan thing gave us places, the graveyards, right?
I was going to say, like, you could have went Salem, but you went Boston instead. So.
Well, Salem, if you've been to Salem, I just came back from Salem. I was telling before you got on, I was saying to Phil,
I caught the tail end of that,
blowing up vacation plans. But Salem, you can walk around the whole city in an hour and a half, right? I mean, you can go from the harbor to the Satanic Temple in 40-minute walk. So didn't seem like it had enough of a platform to put the whole thing behind. But they should have gone there.
No, I liked it, because it was different. It wasn't New York. I was like, oh, thank God it's not New York. I'm so sick of New York. Marvel's New York is a mess. Nobody should live there.
No, and you're going to run into somebody every 2 blocks, worse than celebrities, right?
Exactly. Worse than LA. Exactly.
Not only nobody should live there, nobody should do crime there. It's kind of like you jaywalk and you're going to get body slammed.
That's what we always say. Like, why aren't
they
robbing
where is everybody? Like, anytime Spider-Man needs help, the Fantastic Four are out in space conveniently.
Exactly. Where are the Avengers?
Daredevil's dead again.
Again, Marvel Universe, you can have a crime spree in the Midwest and no one's going to touch you. Yeah, just don't go to New York.
Right. You guys saw Peacekeeper, right?
Yeah.
This scene at the end. Where's the Justice League? Why aren't they here? Just brilliant. So.
Oh, yeah. But, I get it. The whole thing, you want to get out of New York, so you put it in Boston.
Yeah.
You want them, on the other side of the country because they're supposed to be, this unofficial, team thing. So it's like...
Right. And then, but yeah, it was a chance to play out just something different visually, different attitudinally. And I tried to bring the city into it, with references and
City's always a character, definitely.
Yeah. But I also didn't know Boston, so I was making stuff up and looking at maps. And my brother, I think, was still in Boston at that point, or the Boston area. So he had gone to school up there. So I probably tapped him for some things.
Oh, they're going to solve that. He was going to solve that great unsolved mystery, Lilith. Why is there no Boston pizza in Boston?
But that's the lacking of the real cultural touch points, right? New York, I could go backwards and forwards from my own experience. I probably need to spend more time in Boston to know that certain things are happening at certain, times of the year, right?
I thought you might have done it because of MIT and the tech for Frank and stuff like that. I don't know. I was just other things I was thinking, but yeah, that's pretty cool.
But that would have been if we'd been in touch then, that would have been a good story point. I should have brought that more in. Why I didn't, God knows. That would have been awesome to have him have a hacker, brain trust at MIT. That's the thing I needed. Would have needed to invest myself in more, and would have been perfectly.
Yeah, because I think that's my favorite thing. Actually, was the tech. It's like you seemed really invested in it. It was pretty cool. So.
Well, it was a big story point. Morbius wanted that tech. He's like,
I know. Morbius.
Right, but poor Morbius gets the short shrift. I set this whole thing up. And then basically he finally gets blasted with the poor thing, or with the damn thing. And the poor guy is like, it didn't work. Now I'm even worse off than before.
That's Morbius' thing, though.
I know, but from a writer point of view, I set it up. I should have done more with it.
I thought that was the joke. It's like Morbius never gets what he wants.
That could be,
It's like poor Sisyphus. He's just going up that hill. He knows it's going to roll back down. He's just hoping.
I think you nailed the essence of the Morbius character. That's him. He comes in, he goes, drop whatever you're doing, whoever's book it is, drop whatever you're doing, cure me, or I'm going to start killing people.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. That's often how Len would get his assignments, too. No, I'm kidding. I'm just kidding. Len. I want to see Lilith do another spit take. No.
Yes! But no, I love that scene where, him and the other vampire, they're feeding off each other.
I will take big pride in that moment. That was something I know came to me as I was doing. So, wait, 2 vampires. What happens if they go into this yin yang cycle? So that was definitely a good moment.
I like, Morbius. Your blood is undead. This does nothing for me.
I don't know what I expected.
It does start to get. This is now. I'll start to nitpick at things though. There's so many goddamn fangs in that one issue between Hannibal, between Morbius, between the Lilin character. Was it Slaughter or whatever it was? It was just. And again, stone cold slaughter. It's sort of like I'm just leafing through the evil words in the thesaurus. But there's one shot, and the artist who did 9, who I don't want to ding because obviously he was trying to do yeoman's work, but it was not as strong a storyteller as Ron. So this was Mark Pacella, who's a good penciler, but there's so much going on in one scene, I couldn't keep track of who it was. It's just fangs, 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 fangs. Even reading it now, it's a harder read. And so that's partly the writing problem, and it's partly a visual storytelling problem. But too many fangs. No more than 2 vampires per story, kids.
Well, is that part of that too? It's like they wouldn't let you go over the top violence, so it's like you got to make everyone look scary. Just like implied.
Also, just shout out to DOA, Department of Occult.
Oh,
somebody really wanted it to be DOA.
I did. That's me. That's all me. All me, Lilith. That was me.
I love it.
I love those guys. I wanted to do more with them. I want to do more with them now. Phil, it's violence is it's the Forrest Gump thing, right? Violence is as violence does. Once Carnage came out, right? What restrictions did we have in Code Comics? They could pour blood down the middle, the blood of children, down the middle of Fifth Avenue, which apparently I think they did in a Carnage, scene.
Maximum Carnage, his body littering the streets of New York.
Exactly. So, I never felt like we had a restriction on violence.
Well, there's violence, and then there's gratuitous too. So,
that's true.
Necessary to the story. Go for
it.
Right.
Absolutely, and I never think we crossed over into gratuitous violence. But I think I think we, or at least I did, certainly in these books. All kidding aside, I think they're too angry all the time, and I know they had a lot to be angry about, and that was the essence of the pitch. But everybody's always like growling and grimacing and just shouting
But it was the 90s. I was gonna say it was grunge.
I know.
I just picture everybody listening to Nirvana and like
but
Black Hole Sun just blasting constantly.
It's true. But every scene like plays like the the cliche scene in a buddy cop movie where the police captain is yelling out of his office, you broke the rules for the last time, Gates, and I'm not going to protect you, and he's yelling back, I don't care, I'm going to go out in the streets and do what needs to be done. It's just everything's cranked to 11 and yelling and shouty.
And a vampire says, "I'm getting too old for this."
Exactly. But essentially, that's what it was, right?
Oh, there you go. Write that buddy cop comedy, but one of them was a vampire.
Shocked it hasn't been done yet. Must have been done somewhere.
Oh, I wouldn't be surprised. But yeah, no. So it's like, it's the 90s. I think they kind of want the violence, but again, did you guys still have to worry about the Comics Code Authority and stuff? And
I say
was that like a big consideration back then? The Comics
Code? I feel like the 90s totally obliterated the Comics Code. Honestly.
It was gone by the early 2000s.
The Comics Code really got undermined, and well it should have when DC did its Green Lantern Green Arrow stories, and Marvel did its Spider-Man drug stories, and they said you can't do these, you can't talk about these, and both publishers, different times or whatever, said we're doing them anyway.
I don't think you need it anymore. Move along.
Well. And it continued to appear on things, and the books continued to be submitted to it. I think when I was an intern, or I was never an intern. I worked with the interns, but when I was an assistant to the assistant, or I think one of the things I might have done one day was send things to the Comics Code, and they would read them, and they would come back, and sometimes they would reject things, and sometimes there'd be changes. And sometimes there wouldn't be changes, but it was done because it was allowed you to continue to point to the comic and say, "Oh no, we submitted this. It's got the Comics Code Authority." If somebody gave you problems, but certainly the bigger flashpoint, late '80s, '90s would become video games, and less so comic books and worries about that. So, but I was going to say we were all. Seasoned professionals and experienced, but what the hell was I, 26, 27? What the hell did I know? But we were responsible, I think, and we had been. All of us had been editors, right? Len, Howard, myself, Chris Cooper. So we had sort of a sense of responsibility and story structure. So I think we knew the line to go to,
Oh yeah.
and none of us was interested in Lilith, that gratuitous violence. We weren't interested in getting one over on the reader or getting one over on editorial. And look what I got away with. Look at the crazy gratuitous thing I did. Look at the insane thing I did. You know, I'm so crazy or over the top or British or whatever. and just you know, we had a sense of going over the top, but not doing it in a gratuitous way. So no problems.
So you never went full Surgeon General.
No, but there's a good sense. We talked about that before. That was a good sense of me going over the top, not for a Hellraiser book.
Yeah,
that would have been fine, but going over the top for a Daredevil book,
yeah,
or you know that scene might have played out well. In fact, probably did play out well in Nightstalkers. I mean, we had characters who took their organs out and used them to attack other people with them. But in Daredevil, that's not an editorial choice to make, or that's not a storytelling choice you should make. And you had an editorial person, you know, Ralph, who just tapped me on the shoulder or hit me in the back of the head, one or maybe both, and just said, "You're not writing Hellraiser now, Dan." So,
and I know the editor's always like the final word, but did Howard get like say over all the books because he was writing Ghost Rider? Because you always hear those stories. It's like, you know, whoever's writing the main Batman book gets say over. You know, all the other books kind of have to do what they're doing.
Probably behind the scenes, and he was and is good friends with Bobby Chase, beyond the editorial storytelling relationship, and certainly we knew we were building a world on the shoulders of Howard's Ghost Rider success. But Howard is just a great guy and a great storyteller, and there was, if he was whispering in Bobby's ear or they were having side conversations about talent or directions beyond the bigger story conferences that we were all part of, I never heard about it, and I never felt influenced negatively by it. You know, he was so, I'm sure he did have that extra vote or whatever, but that never came up. I mean, I would talk to Howard about things. You know, what are we doing with the world, and we're playing these characters out this way, or we're setting these kind of things up. And sometimes he'd have an opinion about stuff that was different, but that would just be sort of creator to creator talking things through. And then it was like, oh, that's a cool idea. Let's do that. It was always very much that way, you know, like let's try that. Let's play this. It's good sandbox to play in that way. Toy box.
Yeah, but all the crossovers you were involved in, it seems like there's a lot. I mean, the interactions and, you know, just the stories seem to flow smoothly. Because I don't think they do that in modern comics, like get together for the big meetings. I mean, they might sometimes, but it seems like,
and we know they did for Spider-Man at least, and Daredevil.
Oh yeah, they had to for that.
Yeah, that was way too many moving parts. But like the other stuff, like maybe King in Black, that didn't really. Even though that's still my favorite crossover so far for Marvel this decade. But yeah, like other ones, not so much. They just feel very tangential.
It was becoming, and I know not from direct experience, but I know from talking to other folks, you know, certain crossovers would become much more elaborate and controlled by editorial and controlled, you know, we're going to do this, and you have to do this, and here's what you have to do with this character, and that was all sort of structured in a way. It was starting to get that way a little bit, I think, as this Midnight Massacre, you know, would pick up. And there was that feeling of editorial is directing this a little bit more. And maybe as the Midnight Suns continued on, I know that they had more story conferences, which I wasn't part of anymore, but I know other people, you know, would then go to them. And I heard back that it was a lot more controlling in terms of editorial. But that was also the Marvel way. You know, I came up from Epic, where Epic was creator-owned comics, and I was used to having an opinion, but also working with the artists and working with the writers and saying, well, what about this? Why we change this? And a lot of back and forth. And ultimately, for most of those titles, they were creator-owned, so they had kind of final say on things. But I know in talking to Howard afterwards, and more recently, we were on a podcast together about a lot of the Midnight Suns a year and a half ago, and he was just saying, the Marvel attitude toward editorial was just going to change it, not even going to talk to you, and it was weird hearing that from Howard, who I respect and respected, at the time. But that's the world he was brought up. That's how he was taught, because he never came up through Epic, and that was just the attitude. So it was, and the editorial sort of direction. So I think that probably becomes a bigger reasoning for this the shackled structure of the crossovers. You have to do this, you have to be here, you have to make this happen. It's not up to you to figure it out, which can be good and can be bad and possibly good, because then you do have a controlling way to make sure everything lines up.
So do you think it's just the case of in the case of the Midnight Suns, it's like, oh yeah, you guys both build up this big thing. Now you got a popular, well-known brand, and it's like Marvel's like, well, we don't want anything to happen to this, so they get more protective as it gets more popular and stuff.
Maybe. I think there's that, and I think there's also the Midnight Suns did really well initially, right? The first launch and the covers, and the intertwined story, I think had a good trajectory. But then it did not. I think there was the sense it's going to go right to X-Men numbers. It's never going to come down, right? That was the editorial belief. God knows why. It didn't, right? And in fact, it went up, and then it kind of went down, and then it also started to kind of drag down Ghost Rider. So the Ghost Rider and the Spirits of Engine sales, started to kind of pull down. Now, whether they were being pulled down because they were associated with Midnight Suns, not that Midnight Suns was negative. I don't think that it had a negative reputation, but it wasn't tracking to the Sun. So I think the control, Phil, also comes from the sense of, I want an X-Men set of titles, so we're going to start to manipulate this more editorially. If things are going fine, right, and things are going wonderful, a lot of editors are going to just sit back, whether they're just smart enough to know that the creative team has this, or I don't really know what I'm doing anyway, and I'm just going to sit back and let it kind of keep going. But I think when the sales weren't, heading for the next universe, it was a sense of we got to tool this, we got to do certain things. So I think that's where you get a heavier hand of editorial as well. And editorial is an important part of things. I'm not dinging editors. I've been one. So.
Do you think part of it too is like, I love crossovers, but there are people, it's like, say you're only reading Ghost Rider, it's like, and then all the books like do like a big crossover story. It's like, are people is that part of the problem where people are just like, why would I buy my monthly Ghost Rider if I'm only getting like a fourth or a fifth of the story? I can't, or I don't want to buy all these other books. So
yeah, I think that's right. I think again, I'm just being self-critical, and I think a good way. This story breaks apart at certain points because this story, meaning I'm pointing to these kids, breaks apart at certain points because it has to derail into some setup. Some setup I was doing my own. I'm setting up DOA for whatever the hell I'm doing to try to make them into bigger villains, but some of it was detouring into setting up things for the crossover. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a good reader impression. What is this? I came here for Nightstalkers action, or I came here for Ghost Rider's action. Why am I going off on these other things? Even though that's ultimately going to feed into something. But I also think in certain instances, if you're a creator or a creative team with a vision for your book and passion for your character, if you're going off on a crossover, I gotta fit this in. I gotta fit this in. I gotta fit this in. It derails you from being able to move your story ahead.
Yeah.
So annoying in that way.
And again, like I was saying, I think a lot of it's dollars and cents too, because some people might not have the money or want to spend the money on a big huge crossover. And again, like in the 90s,
you never want to feel like they're saying, "Give me your lunch money, nerd." You just never want to feel like that.
True. True. But...
And you guys in the 90s, you were battling, CDs. There was
video games,
movies,
CDs, 3.5-inch floppies. I mean, it's incredible what we had to battle in that day and age. But that's always the essence, right? There's always going to be something you're battling time for.
I think wasn't that like the start of like all you comic creators had to start contending with, we're competing not just with like DC or other companies. Now we got to compete with other media and.
Absolutely, I think that was also the thing that threw some people who had a lot of history with comics, historical time in the industry, where comics had always been. I think Tom DeFalco said this. Tom DeFalco or Archie Goodwin, either one, good sources. Comics had always been a nickel and dime business. In other words, you were not necessarily going to get rich on it, although some people did. But it was consistently that it would always kind of go up and down, but it would always survive whatever distraction was going to come across, right? Oh, rock music, or everyone's going to the movies now or whatever. But comics would be there, and because it was in this nickel and dime sort of cycle, would always kind of come back and become a good influence or a good draw again. But yeah, the 90s started to crack open all that with much more aggressive distractions like higher end video games, and certainly the beginnings of the interwebs, to draw your attention away. AOL, right? Got my CD in the mail. What's this weird information superhighway? Let me go check this out. Fledgling, not as addictive. We didn't have smartphones or any of that crazy stuff, but definitely distractions for your dollar and time that were then not going to go away, and that became much more difficult for comics to contend with.
On a lighter note, can you tell me your favorite character from the Midnight Suns, and then also your favorite character from DOA? I think I know the answers to them, but I just want to confirm.
Geez, that's a good. Those are both good questions. I think Blade is probably my favorite character, and as much as I liked what we did with Drake and Hannibal, right? He could have just been the star, and probably should have just been the star, of this in ways. I think his mission statement and what drives him and what powers him emotionally and physically and supernaturally is really, really interesting, and deserves more. And I'm sure we'll see that more in the films, to come, and hopefully they, resurgence, into comics and such. And I think you go back historically to Blade as a pop culture figure. The Wesley Snipes movie, made, I think in a lot of ways defines what comes later in so many movies. I remember going to that as a preview. I got a special, like, oh, you get to go see Blade because you're involved with comics, and we all thought it was going to be just shit. It's going to be another cheesy, whatever kind of superhero movie.
Fantastic Four.
Yeah, God knows, right?
But God knows. The original Fantastic.
Yeah. But that was a hardcore movie and a hardcore performance, and in the best of ways. So I like him a lot. I mean, I like Ghost Rider as well. Ghost Rider just obviously has the fierceness. But I think when I think back on it from that question, and the DOA characters. I mean, Belial, who was the lead guy, who was I not just because he's the lead guy. I just like that weirdness of him, and I like his ability to prophesize the future.
I thought you were gonna say rat rap for sure, man.
She's good. She's good, and I think if I developed them more, maybe my allegiance would change. And I wish I had developed them more. Given them, but you think you've got more time. I obviously in this issue and these two issues, I'm setting up something for some kind of Dark Trooper type stuff. God knows what I was doing. I can't remember. But obviously I think, okay, we'll get through this Midnight Massacre, and we're going to come out the other side, and these guys are going to become even more of the big bad, for these guys. Maybe somebody else will pick up on them, right? Maybe Len or Howard will start to use
with the
more.
resurgence of Moon Knight, I'm just hoping they just kind of take a second look at the other stuff that surrounds it. That's all.
Well, that's certainly, you guys read the same rumors, or probably more informed than I am, but I mean, they keep saying, oh, we're going to go into these darker corners, and we've got a multiverse of madness next week that might open up some doors, and who knows what comes out of that. And we've got the Midnight Suns with a U game coming.
Yeah.
Coming a year plus down the line. That's certainly going to mishmash a couple of characters at least with what people are used to, right? Because it's going to combine Blade and it's not these characters all. It's like Blade, Ghost Rider, but also Iron Man and I don't know. It's gonna be a mishmash of stuff, but it's gonna have Lilith in it. So,
Ooh.
you know, yeah, that you know,
We want our money.
pretty much, yeah. We've talked. Len and Howard and I were like, yeah, I'm sure we'll see nothing from this, but
you might get a free copy. That's about it.
I'll go for a credit. You know, I'll go for one of those thanks too, because we did create that character. I mean, it's obviously just totally based on mythology and history, but there would be no Lilith, there would be no Lilin, there would be none of that stuff if it wasn't for the four of us sitting in that room and sort of saying, who's going to be, okay, we've got the characters, we've got the world, why the hell are they coming together? What's the thing? So we needed a big bad, and she became our big bad, and then everything backed out of there. And you should have seen us falling over each other when we were such geeks and realizing, wait a minute, there's 9 characters. Boy, there's 9 characters in Lord of the Rings too. Yeah, it's like the Lord of the Rings character. I mean, we're just like, it's like the Fellowship of the Supernatural. It's just.
Did you have like the big whiteboard? You're like, okay, what are we gonna do in chapter 5? Okay.
Oh, we had a whitebold, yeah, and we had long moments of what the fuck are we gonna do? I mean, they were like, there's a pretty good interview somewhere in Marvel Age or whatever, just describing like that whole, back and forth that is just so much fun. And the couple times I've reread it, I sort of see those moments. And there was this infamous moment where whenever we'd hit a wall, like total wall, Len would go out for a cigarette, and then he would come back, and then he'd be like, "What about?" And he'd have
cigarette?
This like, yeah.
What is jazz?
Inspiration.
And he'd come back with some brilliant thing that we'd all jump on.
So how long would you're playing one of those events? How many hours, how many days would that be to like plan one of those events out?
The first one was at least 2 days. I remember we went to some, and they were flush with Marvel money, X money, all this crazy stuff at that point. So we went to, like a corporate retreat sort of thing, So we had big, nice room in a kind of a wooded area, and they had lunches and breakfast and stuff, available to us and snacks. That was like 2 days, right? And we stood overnight. At the place. It was really nice. It was in the area. It wasn't far away, but I think that was a 2-day sort of thing to cook up all the things. We knew what we were doing, why we were there, rather, and then we just spent. And those are all-day sessions. Those are probably 6-8 hours with breaks and such. The second one, the Midnight Massacre one, I want to say was probably. Doesn't stand out in my head as detailed. I don't know if we went away for that one. We probably had at least a half a day or a day thing, but I think it was in the city, and it was just, but it wasn't in the Marvel offices. It was somewhere outside, and we had the same type of thing where we.
So they just sprung the Midnight Massacre thing on you. Like had no say. You're just, hey, you're doing this because like.
No. We knew there was we knew we were coming up on like year 1, right? So Midnight Massacre would kick in and play through at the first year anniversary of the Midnight Suns, right? Issue 10s through 12 or whatever. So we knew that we wanted to do an event for, keep the universe going off on its own and coming back together. Go off on its own, coming back together. That's where, sub-universes of books work. So we got together and we came up with the plot. They didn't. That was all of us going back and what happens? What's this? With that? At some point, the decision was made. Well, what if Blade's mania goes over the top? Right. That was a thing, and then suddenly, if that become, well, why would he do that? Then I'm sure it's Chris saying, "Oh, I have a Darkhold page." Chris had a Darkhold page for everything, and whatever the combination of elements that I don't remember, but no, we drove that story, and then, but we editorial wanted an event, and frankly, we wanted an event too. That we were in this for having fun with the characters, but we wanted as much as editorial wanted Midnight Suns to track to the stars, so did we. How would that not be bad for us to be part of a universe that's, you know, our own and is up here? So
I mean, it was from the '90s. You should be expecting a resurgence any year now. Just saying. I mean, Ben Riley came back.
Oh,
so much of the '90s stuff came back.
Yeah.
So
I know.
I'm just waiting. I'm like, come on.
That Fantastic Four with Ghost Rider. They're doing a mini series on that. So
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, Howard did I think didn't he do? I think he did a Vengeance special or a Vengeance one shot. I want to say a little while ago, maybe a year ago or a little over. So that was certainly something, but I don't know if there's a concerted effort to play these.
Especially
things.
with the Supernatural making a resurgence again too in comics. So I'm just like, fingers crossed.
I would. It'd be fun.
They're 2 issues into a new Ghost Rider series with Johnny Blaze. So I mean,
there are always 2 new issues into a Ghost Rider book, Phil. Come on.
Did they still have the? I don't know the name of the character who was Ghost Rider most recently. So there was.
Robbie Reyes was.
Reyes.
He was kind of on the Avengers. Now they have him like in the multiverse. So it's like, yeah, he's going more cosmic maybe, and like Johnny Blaze, it's very like a horror based comic.
It's like you again, Johnny. Every time I look up, it's Johnny.
So Robbie's still got his car, and Johnny's got a motorcycle again. They brought
yes,
or maybe he's got an electric scooter to be more. I don't know. It's an electric motorcycle.
It's a Tesla, okay? It's a Tesla.
We're saving that for Dan Ketch, yeah. But no, I know we're going long, but like those big summit meetings students had to like plan out the event. So like mostly it was just going over like the general plot, and then it was just like the details. It's like, okay, well in this chapter, Howard's gonna get Ghost Rider to here. Dan, you're gonna pick up in your book, and then you have to start here and then end your book here, and then once it was over, you just had to fill in the details from. As long as you got
so simple, Phil.
Exactly. It's Phil.
I know it's not that simple. What I'm just saying, like you guys would plan out. It's like, okay, you start at point A and you have to get to point B, but you know
that would be the last
of creating a story around that. Yeah.
Right, but that would what you described there. That would be the end of the day, because the beginning of the day was the blank whiteboard. What the hell are we going to do? And we would have to then. You know, once you sort of went through all of that combination of that's not going to work, this isn't going to work, what about that? And especially because we were driving it, we got the chance to kind of play that stuff out. And editorial would weigh in. That might have been the place for the infamous "that's too sci-fi" horror comment. But we once you cook that up, oh wait, we got a story, right? You know, we're going to start here. Blade's going to become this. He's going to kill everybody. Then we got to bring him back to life. And then we're going to do that. Then we would know. We would go to that grid you were just talking about and say heavy beats. Start here. Darkhold letter appears. You know, heavy beat this, heavy beat that. So then you'd sort of know what you could sort of pattern out. Howard's going to start this. Get it to here. Dan's going to pick up this. Blade's going to become that. Whatever it was.
Okay.
Those would be the very broad baton passes at the end of that summit, and then we would work it out probably more in detail amongst ourselves. I want to do this with Morbius and leave him here. Is that going to work for you? Yeah, I can do that. Or I'd really rather you left him. Can you set this up? You know, we might be midway through the story, and I might call Howard or Len or something and say, I would like to do this. Can you set this up here? You know, yeah, I could do that. You know, so then we would be able to like, you know, have those moments. But the grid would come after, you know, the sense of the story was there.
Yeah. And so at the end of all that, would you have to send this to the editorial, or was someone from editorial sitting in with you guys, or what? How did that work?
Well, all plots and be plots for Marvel at that point. All plots would be sent to editorial first. Editorial would approve them, and then there would be maybe a check-in with the other creator. Can you read this because they're using Blade in this way, or can you read this Len because they're using Morbius, in this way. And that with the Marvel authority over it, that wasn't so much Len would say, well, I think Morbius should do this and that and the other thing. They might take that under advisement, but they might just as easily also say, yeah, whatever, we want to do it this way and change certain things. And even rereading this, there's a couple of moments in there where it was like there's a meanwhile, right? That bridges one scene, which I never would have written in my life. So that's just editorial, just suddenly slugging in a line, never even asking me, never even sort of saying, and that's not like that's a great crime or whatever, but just suddenly, chunking in this bridge thing, of which I don't think added or took away from the story necessarily, but just kind of like just an arbitrary editorial thing.
Was editorial more like it's like, oh hey, we need you guys to do what, like a 15 or 18 part story, so everyone's gonna get was the math there problem? It's like, okay, you're each gonna get like 3 issues or whatever to do this crossover. Was that?
Well, again, aiming for the first year anniversary, right? Yeah. Midnight Massacre would run through, I can't remember the issues, 11, 12, something like that, or 10, whatever it was.
I guess my question is, like, did you guys have control over the number, or did they like tell you like you were getting this set amount of issues?
No, they probably would have said we want Midnight Massacre to play out in all the number 10 issues. Okay. So we would know we would have 1 issue each or 2 issues each.
Yeah.
Whatever it would be. And then we would play it out here. I mean, obviously these 2 issues aren't part of Midnight Massacre per se, but start to presage it and set it up in that way. But then I can't remember what Midnight Massacre ran, 1 issue each, 2 issues each. They would have probably said, this makes sense. We can play this out. We can put Midnight Massacre on the cover. And then we would, and at that point it was still very fluid too. So if editorial came and said, well, we're going to do it 1 issue each, we could have made a valid argument and saying, can we do it 2 issues each? And they would have said, sure, or not.
Okay. No. Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just always like, intrigued by, like the minutia, and it's like, how does this work? And
Right. Like, I mean, as a Devil's Reign, the Daredevil story that just happened, which looks so fabulously involved. I don't know. I mean, if editorial drove that, if Chip Zdarsky drove that, I don't know. I would not be surprised if he drove that. And sort of said this whole Daredevil world happens.
I mean, the bigger the event and more books involved, doesn't it editorial kind of have to steer that maybe? I mean, I'm sure Chip was like, story points, but it's like just the
yeah. I mean, you've got to have a lot of people involved, because then you've got a lot of teams involved, and teams that may not be associated with each other or know the characters or whatever. And if it's cohesive, then
like the new Thunderbolts spinning out of that.
And again, one event starts before another one ends, it seems like these days.
Right. Yeah.
Well, it's because it's pocket universes. That's the whole thing. So.
And it gets exhausting.
Unfortunately, right? For better or worse.
and it wears you out. I would think at a point, from a buying point of view, you get into that sense of, I have to buy all of this, as opposed to wanting to buy it.
Well, in the case of Devil's Reign and Spider-Man, obviously, we wanted to, but seeing Black, I was just like, I don't know. And then I ended up liking it and finding them all, so... Devil's Reign things depends.
Yeah, Devil's Reign was good, but when you keep doing event after event after event, it looks like a cash grab. But it's like, back in the day, like the Midnight Sun stuff, it's like, oh, you could be like, man, look at these guys are having fun. They're doing these big events, and maybe once a year, if that...
Well, that's what it was. It was it was meant to be a once-a-year event, and I don't know how long the Midnight Suns lasted after that. Like two or 3 more years, like as an imprint in its own way. I'm sure they had an event every year.
Then we hit the 90s. What, implosion?
No, well, yeah, you would have gotten to 96, right? And then then it would have been hard times.
All right. You have any other questions for this man, Lilith, or have we gotten enough?
No, we have taken up enough of his Saturday. We always appreciate a good Chichester chat. We truly do.
Well, thank you, guys. I like starting the Saturday this way, so thanks again for the invitation.
Oh, and Phil, for October, more spooky stuff from DG, please?
Okay. Yes.
Okay.
We'll definitely have to do that. All right. But next time, he's a co-writer on it. Punisher Annual 4. So if you want to invite if you want to invite Mr. Gregory Wright, you can. Maybe we'll get some juicy Chichester gossip.
All right. Well, I'll put the word out to him, and I'll see if he's up for it. He's a force of nature in his own right. So
get your bingo cards ready, kids, for the word competent.
Oh, Punisher story. Yeah.
All right, I've got it written down. I'm all set. I'll do my homework.
And you want to tell everyone about the newsletter and anything
Please, newsletter, storymaze.substack.com. Please check that out. And just, I'll preface this a little bit ahead of time. We'll come back to this again, but I will again be at Terrificon Mohegan Sun in July. So start making your plans now if you want to say hi in person, which is in Connecticut. So that was fun to get invited back to that.
Ooh, nice.
Phil, let's go gambling. Tell Danielle she's gotta stay home.
I'm trying to get you up here in August.
I can't do August for work, but July.
For
DG. Come on.
It's like gambling.
It's a casino. Do you know what?
We could do a live episode. You know.
Panel.
You know.
Oh, come on.
Exactly.
Oh, maybe. All right. So, again, thank you, sir, for your time.
Thank you, guys. This has been fun as always. So please stay well, and we'll catch up again and see each other soon.
Yes, in a month. Thank you, sir.
All right. Take it easy. Be well. Bye-bye.
Bye.